Dog Works Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dog Works. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com. From First Paw Media, sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company, this is the Dog Driver Show. Visit our website at dogworksradio.com. Now here are your hosts, Robert Forto and Kurosh Parto.
Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Robert, and I'm here with my co-host KP, and we are the Dog Driver Show. And today we have a guest calling in. His name is Jerry Woods. What do you know about Jerry?
Jerry Woods, I know Jerry for many, many years now. We used to race in the 8-dog, 6-dog class together for many years, and he is from Interior Alaska. He lives in Chistochina, which is on the road system, native village of Chistochina. Jerry comes with a tremendous amount of heritage, Alaskan native heritage in the sled dogs. I believe he's originally from Rampart on Yukon River. And he has tons of great stories behind. Jerry, welcome to the show. And for our listeners, tell us who you are and what are you all about?
My name is Jerry Woods. My dad is from Rampart. My mother was from Tanana. And I grew up here in Manly Hot Springs a little bit, Rampart every summer, and Tanana. They're all within that little triangle. So it's on the Yukon River and Tanana River. And Tanana is right where the Tanana River goes into the Yukon.
Jerry, growing up, your family had sled dogs?
Yeah, it was very few people had snow machines when I was growing up. It was a lot of dogs. Everybody had dogs back then, you know. And it kind of faded away in the 70s and 80s. Most of the people went to snow machine, but our family had dogs. My dad was from Rampart, and back in the day, he hauled mail. And my mother, they used it for transportation, for traveling.
So actually, the dogs they were used for utility purposes, not for races.
No, my uncles on my mother's side and my uncle on my dad's side, they raced back in the day around Live and Good in Fairbanks area. His name was Harold Woods, and that's the Earhart's grandfather. And on Tana's side, it was Jake Starr, the Starr brothers. That's my mom's uncle, my mom's brothers.
Yeah, guys who are not familiar to the the sled dog heritage in Alaska, names that Jerry is mentioning, these are like dynasties. You know, they've been in the sled dog sport for generations and generations. Jerry, back when you were talking about obviously, if the dogs, they were modes of transportation, how was the feeding, for example? I know that a lot of people that do fish. How did they feed back then?
Man, that was like fish. And some people use caribou meat, because caribous used to go right through our country. Caribou meat, fish, and for a thickener, they had some kind of cornmeal, you know, and there wasn't really that much prina or the dried food, you know, when I was growing up. Just like the people that raced, like Lester and them, because I grew up with Earhart Kennels, on Earhart Kennels. And that was, they fed their dogs good because they all raced, you know. That was a original race team.
So the race dogs, they didn't eat the same thing that the rest of the dogs, working dogs, they did. Did they?
No, different people fed different, you know. But like some people, they just had strictly race dogs, you know, and trapline dogs. mostly trap line dogs. You know, the best dogs out of the trap line went to the race team, you know. That was in February. They weeded them out by then, you know.
Mm-hmm. And Jerry, like through the years, and I will not ask you how old you are or how young you are. Can you tell me how the sled dogs they evolved in the villages?
What was that?
Throughout the years, how do you think the sled dogs they evolved in villages?
That, you know, that people back home, you know, here are certain people that really looked at the way dogs was built. You know, my uncle was one of them. And as a young man, he used to tell me, this is what you look for, you know, on a dog. And some people just had this regular tough old working dogs. And out of those working dogs, there was always a dog that popped up in their kennel, you know, that was an amazing dog, you know. And like when I was growing up, there was a lot of small kennels. Everybody had dogs, you know, like, and then out of those dogs, these dog mushers, big-time dog mushers, would come down and they'll pick through the village dogs just to get some more dogs for their team, like George Atla, Bill Taylor. And some even went to Dr. Roland Lombard, you know, from our village in 10. And that's, you know, and people just kind of went like they didn't have to use dogs to travel no more. It was just a sport. And they really looked for the good dogs, you know, and bred those for speed, stamina. And a lot of the race dogs that didn't really make it went to the middle distance. The bloodline, same bloodline, you know.
Jerry, when obviously, as all we know, in the 90s, the influence of hounds got imported in a lot. I mean, we started to have hounds in Alaska, and did that change the style of dogs in villages?
Yeah, all over. You know, everybody went from regular husky dogs. Everybody wanted that little part of that Saluki, because that Saluki hound was the back. When I was growing up, everybody had part Saluki. That was for speed. Not too much brains, but speed, you know. And they had to breed them back with husky because for the mind, stronger mind. And that was all Saluki. And some people even had that Airedale, you know, bird dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And that was different, you know, because everybody is trying different things. Some even tried Greyhound, but Greyhound is their mind. They had different kind of mind. So everybody was trying things for speed, faster dogs.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously you were born and raised with a sled dog basically culture, and the time that I know you, you've been racing with with the Alaskan circuit. You know, we meet each other several times a year to do sprint races in limited class. How all of that evolved from kind of like trapline dogs, village dogs, to a very competitive team that you have right now. A lot of hounds in them actually from Scandinavia in your dog team currently. How did that evolve?
Well, it was just get a breeding and see what kind of pups we'll come out with, you know. Because my our daughter Jessie, she had a she bought out some pups and raised some dogs, and she just messed around with them. It was just for her activity, and she tried to race, and she did race, but she had a good bloodline. And I just got a couple dogs that was come out of a good bloodline too. It just bred them up and got some pups, and that's the pointer blood, and everybody got that now. But them are some amazing animals, those pointers. Take a few years for them to grow up and get their head right, but they gotta have husky blood in them. For some reason, they gotta have husky blood for their hair and a little bit, And I think it got lots to do with the stamina. That husky blood.
Definitely. And listeners who are not familiar where Jerry lives currently, village of Chistachina is between Anchorage and Tok, Alaska, north of Anchorage, about 200 some miles north. And it's fairly cold out there compared to Anchorage and where we live because they're interior Alaska. They're further away from the ocean, so they don't get this milder climate. Jerry, how is the temperature affecting the new style of dogs that you have, and what type of care, additional care, you have to provide to these guys?
Oh, they got to be loaded up after 15 below. And they love it, They get all loaded up into these boxes. And they're with that big box, they're all a board apart. And they kind of generate their own heat, warm up that little house. And usually it's a 20-dog box house. And after a certain temperature, they don't mess around. They run around for a few minutes, and they all come to you because they know they're going into a warmer place. And it's high maintenance. Those pointers are definitely high maintenance compared to huskies. So that colder temperature gets to them. And if you don't load them up, it's just more food and their weight.
Yeah, definitely. For listeners who are not familiar with Jerry's talking about loading him up and dog boxes, basically in our lingo, in the mushing lingo, we when you put the dog inside their dog houses, which are dog boxes actually, which are not the dog houses, a separate thing. Dog boxes, they are usually a group of 4, 6, 8, 10. Usually it's a pair number, up to 20 or whatever, which is basically a gigantic cube with holes in it. And the dogs, usually 1 by 1 or 2, usually 2 by 2, they go in each box, which has straw. And they have, like Jerry said, one wall between each other. So the heat stays in that dog box, basically. And also we use that for transportation. Usually the dog box is in the back of a truck. And so when you want to go race in another town, you load the dogs and you put them in their dog boxes and you take them to each whatever race. And when you get to the site, we say we drop the dogs. We basically bring the dogs outside so they can run around and do their business and just relax a little bit. And then we reload them back for for the temperature if the temperature is cold. Jerry, the racing that you've done, you've been very competitive in the 6 and 8 dog class over the years with the dogs that you have. What are your objectives this year? What are you planning to do?
Well, this year we just got a few extra dogs from another person, and I'll see what happens. I like to try that open Rondi North American one time in my life. Since I was a child, young man, I always been to those races, help teams get to the starting line, and usually family, friends. with dogs. And back home, I grew up with Earhart Kennels, and they always had a lot of dogs, and all the brothers that I grew up with, they raced the Rondy North American, and there's one still racing, John Earhart. Then I got another friend, they're originally from Canada, Marvin Cochrane. He lives in Fairbanks now. And they're always in their big races, and something I really want to do one time in my life, But it's a lot different, I think, in the way I talk to people from that limited races, what I always enjoyed, because it's fast, competitive, and everybody is just seconds apart, and you can't mess up on the races, because if one stopped, you're 4 places back, and on a good run, you're seconds up there. So, and I see those guys on those other races, they could stop, mess up dogs, and then they got enough miles there left to make up that time that they just lost. So it's a whole different ball game the way I look at it.
Well, you're absolutely right. Jerry talks about, for me, Jerry and myself, we're good friends, and we talk. I was telling him about my transition from a 10-dog class to the open last few years, and just the very first time I did Rendezvous, it was surreal, because you're hanging out with people that Jerry is naming, the Earharts, the Cochranes, the Taylors, the Streepers, the big heritage behind and big effort behind these dog teams, and like he said, you can make mistakes and you can come back. You can run into something during the trail races and then catch up and make some of these times back. Jerry, for you as a limited, driver who goes fast, and limited driver, guys, it's for people who are running 4, 6, and 8 or 10 dog only in each class, and for up to 10 or 12 miles usually. Transitioning to the open class, hopefully weather permitting and pandemic permitting this year. What are your objectives? What do you think you should do to be able to accomplish any of those 2 races?
Well, I think, the main thing is keep your dogs healthy and try to get some good miles. Make sure everybody get toughened up good, But it ain't really new to me. Only thing new to me is the race itself, because I trained with different mushers, like I handle for George Atla, Q Byfeld from Huslia, Earhart Kennels from Tanna, and I helped Clyde Mayo. I forgot to mention Clyde Mayo. He's from Rampart, and he was a competitive Rondy North American man. Also, with these open class dogs, he did win the limited North American one time with some younger dogs that became his main team in the Open North American too, later on as they grew older. And watching those guys and the way they trained, you got to have tough dogs, tough and keep them happy. So it's going to be different for me, because it's just mostly I think I got to learn to train again, like at a slower pace, longer distance, slower pace. And sometimes for me that gets a little boring, because I'm used to speed. And like me and Croce, and there's a lot of Don Brown and all them that used to going fast, and it's different with open team. You got to just keep them steady And I talked to my brother, but he's a good dog man. He grew up around dogs and always had dogs. His name is Ray Woods, but he said those leaders. I said my one leader, its line is never tight until it's coming home. He said, don't worry about it. It's longest it's in front of dogs and they ain't tripping over its line. Things like that. It's kind of different. But he said, long as your leader stays in front and leads your team, coming home, it's a different story of how dogs work.
Hey, Jerry, I have a couple of questions for you. You've brought up some interesting points that I would like to touch on before we close here. My first question to you is how folks used to travel between the villages to some of these races. I had the pleasure last winter of traveling from Nenana up to Manly, Hot Springs, and on over to Tanana and Ruby and Galena on a serum run trip. And I've been through a lot of that country, and that's some beautiful country up that way. But how did folks back in the early days get from, say, Manly to Tanana? Was it all river travel back then, where they would, they would take their dogs by sled to these races and then a race on the weekends? How did it usually work?
I heard stories about this when my uncles was racing long ago. There was a team. That was my cousin's father. He had some big dogs, really big dogs, And they used to hire him to go in front of them, break trail. Break trail, and they'll follow him. It'll take 2 or 3 days to get from Tanana to Live and Good. That race was from Live and Good to Fairbanks, or Fairbanks to Live and Good. That was one of the big races. But they used to, and then when I was growing up, they would drive their dogs from like Tanana to Manly. Some of them will drive their team from there to Manly, and then they'll have a truck there when I was growing up. And a lot of them would have charter planes.
And then they would go race in Fairbanks or whatever, sort of follow a similar circuit to what we have now, where you would race every weekend. Is that right?
Yes. And, not everybody raced in back where I'm from originally in Tanana. And like I say, there'll be some people that'll go through that village. And everybody had their own favorite dog musher, Like the Earhart Kennels, they would help George Atta, or they'll loan dogs to George Atta. My uncles will loan dogs to Bill Taylor. And some people will, and Dr. Roland Lombard, when I was growing up, he would come down and buy some dogs from my uncles too. So there was just a few dog mushers that all the best dogs will leave in the early fall and come back in the spring, like whatever, they'll go back home. They'll be sent home.
Right.
Like, not everybody got to race out of that village, but they had a dog or some in the big races.
Right.
That was something. And that's how they pulled for each other, for the big teams or the big mushers.
So for folks that the folks that are listening, it's similar to other sports, I guess. They had the teams that they cheered on, whether it be football like the Cowboys or basketball like, I don't know, the Lakers or somebody. Everybody had somebody to cheer for. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like family members.
Right.
Like Clyde Mayo and them. They have good dogs, but he had brothers and family members that had dogs too, and they all the best dogs went to Clyde, you know.
Right.
But everybody had dogs.
Jerry, before we run out of time here, I want to ask you about the pandemic, and I want to focus this a little bit on your thoughts because you grew up out in rural Alaska in the villages, and I know that they're dealing with it a little bit different than we are here in the quote big city, or maybe even you are on the road system. What are your thoughts to your family, extended family, friends, all of those folks that are out there in those villages? How are they handling it, or how are they faring with the pandemic as we sit here going into December?
It's kind of a scary deal, you know, but like I went through Canada this year by boat, and you couldn't get into the village. You had to just go get gas. That's the farthest you could go is gas. Couldn't go in the stores, and like on the road system, it's different. You can't stop people from traveling the highways, you know.
Right.
But it's pretty bad. I hope it's over here soon. But like on the dog musher world, you know, that was like big family members all gathering because everybody knew each other. It was fun to mingle and talk and visit. And now you got to kind of keep your distance from everybody, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's different because, you know, you never see your dog musher friends. You say goodbye, and that's early spring. And then you don't see them until dog musher starts up again. And like it's a family. It's a big family deal. Like I would say, kind of like, you know, are you going to be here next week, or what's your plans next week? Or you know, are we racing again next week against this place or whatever place we go? You know.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most special things that we have about the musher community is just that, getting together and hanging out together. And I hope we can have that again soon. And, you know, racing is secondary if we can just have that community back, because I think a lot of us miss that. Like you said, a lot of us only see each other during the race season, and unless we're on Facebook or something, we may not visit for half the year. Jerry, we're out of time here. KP, what else do you have for Jerry before we go?
No, Jerry, I'll be definitely cheering for you. Looking forward to see you on the avenue during the rendezvous. It'll be a fun experience. I think it'll be great to have another native team among the racers. Looking forward to see you there. Good luck with your training, buddy, and stay safe with your family. And we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of our guest today, Jerry Woods, this is Robert and KP for the Dog Driver Show. Be sure to check us out over on dogworksradio.com. All of our episodes live right there. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
From First Paw Media, this is the Dog Driver Show. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you can see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Robert Forto and Parto. Our producer is Robert Forto and created for First Paw Media.